Now we will kick off the after break session with listening to Benjamin Rohe, who comes from Germany, and he has 12 years of experience as working with as an entrepreneur within internet and media. Benjamin, the floor is yours. Welcome to Startup Day. Varsågod, varsågod.
So, good morning. I only know a few words Swedish, actually. So, saying good morning and some nice and bad stuff is basically all I can say. I'm very pleased to be here today. I'm going to talk about failure and lessons that I have actually learned along the way being an entrepreneur. So, one of the messages I would like to share today with you today is you should stop worrying all the time when you're trying to do something. It probably sounds very simple, but I mean, if you think through it, what does it help you anyway? I mean, you worry and you don't focus enough on what you actually want to do. So, my starting question would be a quick hands up to you. Whoever failed on trying to do something big, when you really tried to set out something? And who of you who just raised their hands ever admitted that in public? Thank you, what you just did. So it wasn't that hard. So before we go into talk about failure, let me give a quick introduction about myself. I'm an angel investor, I'm a serial entrepreneur and guest lecturer on various universities. I am German, as you might know. I'm born '81. I'm married to a beautiful Swedish wife. I am a huge soccer fan. I've started my first company when I was 17, and I'm living online, I would say, since 1996. We started our company quite small, and I always tried to work whenever I had the time. Is it possible to lower the light probably a little bit to see any of? Excellent. Thanks. We grew very fast with our company, and we tried to manage chaos. It's hard to see because it's quite dark. I don't know if it's possible to see. So there are a lot of computers stacked up, and that was our startup office in 2001. Actually, a company which filed to go public. So this is how sometimes it could look like in a company you might considering buying stocks of. We used what we had. This was in the same office, our server farm, and we always partied hard. And I failed over and over again and trying to do several projects. So let's talk about failure. Failure, I think, is always perceived as a really negative and bad thing that can come to your life. And I see it completely different. And a lot of serial successful entrepreneurs around the world join me in that perspective. Friend Martin was giving me this quote when I asked him about how he perceives failure. So actually, success for him is failure gone wrong. Which I only can underline because you cannot plan success, but you can try on failing and failing quite fast. So failure for me also is fun and an instant lesson. So you should treat it as such. Take failure as let me start with success. Success is something, if you're always and only successful in life, you're not successful, in my perspective, because you never aimed high enough. If you're successful all the time, means that you're only able to achieve the goals you actually have set, and they most probably being too low. Otherwise, you would have failed now and then because your goals would have been too high. So failure, for on the other perspective, this is something that gives you the possibility to bounce back, reshape, and go back again for your goal that you initially set to yourself in order to pursue what you're trying to achieve, and success is only a confirmation of doing what you do it right, what you actually try to do. So some examples on failure, and it's quite obvious that also big corporations and startups fail over and over again. Every one of you might seen Google Wave and over the past years, which is something that failed. Most people wouldn't have expected. Cool, which is a search engine, or was actually a search engine, was overfunded, very technically, burned 35 million US dollars in funding, failed. Choose, trying to revolutionize the TV experience over the internet, stumbled over content licensings and failed. Orkut was the tap into social networking for Google, and had even the chance to surpass Facebook in its early days, and actually failed. So big ideas do fail, but most of the ones we showed before might not be perceived as such a big and bad failure as people always discuss in public. Why is that so? I think there's a secret formula behind failure, which I actually call return on failure. So what does return on failure instead of return on investment mean to you? It's a pretty simple formula. As long as you do benefit more from the technology and the ideas and the contacts and product that you develop than the time and money you have actually invested, this is in return on the failure that you just witnessed it with maybe some friends of yours as co-founders, etc. And this is such a valuable contribution to your later life, that you should fail as much as possible, actually. So going to the lessons that I've learned along now 13 years of being an entrepreneur myself, is that you should always imagine the impossible and try to build that. I mean, for you, I just came into Stockholm yesterday with Swebus, and there was free Wi-Fi on board too. I took this picture last year at the Stanford University, and I was really surprised by this, because like 10 years ago, I wouldn't even would have imagined to have my computer wirelessly connected all the time to the internet. And if I would have told someone back then, in 10 years from now, you're going to ride in a bus and it's going to be possible to use Wi-Fi in it, they would have said I'm insane. So try to build the impossible, and even dream beyond these things that people tell you that are impossible today, and to shoot high and aim low. That's the boardroom where you hopefully going to be in the future with your company. That's the New York Stock Exchange. When you bring your company public, they will have an early morning brunch on the house. So the next step would be just making things happen, instead of just think over and over again and being afraid to fail. Just do things. Maybe it wasn't right back then when we spent a hell lot of money on fancy Apple computers back then, but we just did something, and it starts with the really small things every morning when you get up and trying to pursue what makes you passionate about. Hire talented people is pretty simple thing to say, but I must say I never really looked into the CVs of people, and I rather asked them simple questions or gave them simple tasks. It varies from if it are rather salespeople or technology people. It's different. It's a different kind of set of questions or tasks they shall do, and to see how they get through this, let's say, riddle you tell them, if they really trying to just do it or think over it too much time. I think it's a good indicator for yourself. And all of these people do quite well today, even though they don't look like it. They became all quite successful in what they did. Go out and meet smart people. It's simple to say, but just go out all the time. Don't sit in front of your computer and trying to think about what could go wrong, how could it go wrong, how could I improve it if it goes wrong. Talk to people. The instant feedback is way better than trying to think through different cases, calculate through them, and all kind of stuff. And share your ideas on whenever situation you're able to do so. Go out and share your ideas. I mean, I have this this great example of the founders of Mint.com. They actually went to the train station with like some hand-scribbled paperwork showing what they actually want to do and asked people for feedback. So it's like, it's no rocket science to do something that people actually do want. And it's very easy to find out, talk to people, and take this feedback and helps you to shape your ideas. Find your USP is something you might have heard several times, and that's the most thing that will keep you from surviving in the competition out there. As I previously mentioned, fail fast and fail cheap. It's, I think, the key thing. As less you spend on each failure you do, as more failures you can do in your life, and that's a great thing. Because as more times you fail, as more feedback in some sort of you get from investors, customers, friends, competition, etc., etc. And always be aware of that massive changes do happen today faster than ever. Deal with them, but also try to turn them into an instant opportunity for yourself. It's never worth anything to roll yourself in self-pity or trying to like figure out for ages why I actually failed in that moment, but also be aware of the lessons that you've learned. And that's quite, I think, the most complicated part about failure, because it's natural for us as human beings to prevent ourselves from failing. I mean, when you're a little kid, you start running, you fall on your knees, you stand up, you start running again, you fall on your knees. Maybe the third or fourth time you did that as a little kid, you automatically learn this is not the way you can do it, so stop doing it. And it is a built-in feature that we all have, and you need to drop this when you want to become a successful entrepreneur. Because maybe in a different market, in a different time, in a different way of communicating a product, or whatever, it's not turning out to be a failure, but turning out to be a success. And taking things for granted, I even see me many times like, yeah, but I have seen this doesn't work. That might have been true in that specific case in the past, and might have been a big failure back then. But who knows if like someone starts something like Google Wave in another 3 years, maybe it's going to be successful. Who knows? But just pointing out, hey, Google did that already, and if they failed on it, that will never work. I hate these people, and I hate myself for doing that sometimes too. But it's really hard to turn these situations into opportunities. Be ready for your jump into the cold water. Like I said, just go ahead and do things, but also very importantly, take a break whenever you can. Take a step back. It has several positive effects for yourself. You can readjust your mindset. You can imagine something different, maybe with the same product, the same thing you kept working on every day. If you're not doing it every day, I have really changed so many products and ideas I worked on in just taking a weekend off or 2 days during the week and just did something completely else, and then trying to readjust the things you do every day, because you're really ending up quickly in your own mess every day. And most importantly, it's you who's making the difference in all of that, and trying to handle failure as something that is good for yourself and it's valuable to share. I think this is what's going to change a lot of generations from now, building new companies, because if the way people in Europe especially perceive failure persists the way it is today, we will always run behind entrepreneurs from the Silicon Valley, from San Francisco in particular, or like from Israel, because they do not care so much about failure. They get up again and do it again. So do it again and getting up again, it's not only me and it's not only you who's failed many times or will fail many times in life. I brought a little example of someone you might all know as a small video that I like to share, and would be great if we could turn off the light for that.
I've missed more than 9,000 shots in my career. I've lost almost 300 games. 26 times I've been trusted to take the game-winning shot and missed. I've failed over and over and over again in my life. And that is why I succeed.
So, thank you very much. That was my presentation about failure. Tack så mycket. And I'm happy to take any questions. I will answer everything, even though it's super embarrassing. People think so, talking about failure.
I have a question.
Go ahead, Nas.
We heard that you're running a new startup, new project. We Make a Startup.
Yeah, well,
Can you tell us about that?
We make a startup. I can show you quickly. Several times I get approached by young entrepreneurs, people who are trying to build up something and saying, hey, but I really do need a co-founder. I'm looking for someone who can help me build this company, and I do not find anyone in my network. And I get this question all the time, and I always think, like, why is there no destination where I can refer people to, like, go to this site, call this person, or whatever, someone who can help these people. So some friends of mine and myself, we decided to put up this website, and it's basically the Craigslist for co-founders. It's a simple marketplace. You can just go in there, sign up as a founder profile or a startup profile. It's absolutely free, and you can find people beyond your network, completely international. So there's already 150 people from MIT to Stanford to Israel, India, Scandinavia. So if you're really trying to start a company and you're lacking a co-founder, try this and it might help you.
Interesting, interesting. We make a startup.com. Sure.
Nice presentation, Benjamin. It was really nice to hear you talk about your experience and so on. I was wondering a little bit what you said about failing fast and cheap. As an amateur, I'm not quite sure what that means because I don't got the same experience as you. So I was wondering if you can give an example of how to do that. What's your experience of failing fast and cheap?
Yeah, thanks for the question. It's a great question. It's actually a topic you could do a one-day workshop out of how to fail fast and fail cheap. And it really starts with some significant change in mindset, especially for us Germans, is not to develop the perfect product, but it's developing the good enough product. So developing something that is good enough to cover 80% of what you actually aim to do, go out and get market feedback and figure out if it works or not quite fast. This is like the core principle of failing fast and cheap. In the past, if you look into hardware manufacturing, if you look into car manufacturing, you would never buy a car that is good enough. But in the web and in technology, it's possible to go out with a good enough product. And that's something I think people in the Silicon Valley do pursue really, really good. And that's something especially we in Europe do lack a lot of, because we're always trying to build the perfect product first and then figuring out no one really wants it. So it might be beautiful and might be useful, but no one really buys it. So why did you do it from the beginning? Try to do something simple and try to figure out if it will really work. That's basically the core principle of it.
Thank you. We have a question here.
Hi, my name is Lucas, founder of Skriva På. I have a question about hiring. I kind of have the idea how to recruit people on the technical side, but what kind of tasks do you give people on the business side when you recruit them?
Well, on the technical side, to answer that quickly, because that's a pretty simple thing to do. We started several times to put up like online forms where you get some questions that you should solve with the technical perspective to it. So it's really like hardcore tech questions, and we do track based on a JavaScript that is running on the website how long you need to solve each of the questions. And then we figure out if these people just copy-pasted the answers or if they really took time to solve that. And based on that, we pre-select the people that we're going to invite for the companies. And on the business side, it's like sometimes we just do an interview with 2 or 3 people at once, and we create like a role game, and we give them different tasks, and they have to think about them. And then you might come back to them, or we already, if we have a lot of time, write down this kind of role game and give it to people before they come to the job interview, and then they have to like it's a bit like theater. They have to act the way they would do it. Well,
What would the task be? Was the question.
What would the task be? So if it's like sales driven, you tell them the situation. Okay, there is a product. You want to sell monkeys online. What's the sales channel? How are you going to approach selling monkeys online? And what do you need to promise to people that it won't arrive dead at your home? That it will be fun having that monkey at home. How are you going to do it?
Thank you. Benjamin, thank you very much.
Tack så mycket.
Come on.
Thank you. Thanks.
Very good, very good.
Thank you.